In a crumbling city of the dead, miles away from anything remotely resembling human civilization, lives a single human kid named Will. But this isn't your typical boy raised by wolves scenario. Nope. Will's guardians are a trio of undead. Blood, a cheerful skeleton warrior with serious dad energy. Mary, a mummified priestess who's basically the mom you wish you had. And Gus, a grumpy ghost wizard who's as likely to scold you as he is to save your life. These three undead pour their lives into raising Will, teaching him everything from combat and magic to how to say grace before meals. But as Will grows up, he starts asking some big questions, like who am I? And why he's being raised by people who are technically dead. To figure that out, Will dives deep into the secrets of his eerie homeland, uncovering his caretaker's tragic pasts, the messed up history of this cursed city, and some divine truths about the gods. So, our story kicks off with the protagonist cruising through the afterlife when he spots a mysterious lantern. Next thing you know, he's reborn into a new world with no manual. But luckily, he's got Gus the ghost to give him a crash course in magic. Gus is chill, but the real MVPs are Mary, a sweet yet tough mummy who keeps him fed, and Blood, a skeleton who's basically an undead personal trainer. These three have been raising him since day one, and while they're amazing, it's clear they've got some deep, dark secrets. Not that our protagonist can judge he's got his own skeleton or rebirth in the closet. Flashback to baby him, where he decides this second shot at life is worth living. Fast forward to a slightly older version of himself, where the training montage begins. Blood's all about brute strength. Hit stuff now, finesse later, while Gus gets into the nitty-gritty of magic, explaining how proper pronunciation is the difference between a powerful spell and an embarrassing fizzle. He also casually suggests solving problems with money instead of magic because priorities. Back home, Mary gives him a lesson on how undead like her are made, which probably isn't the kind of bedtime story most kids get. Another year and one murder lesson later, he's sparring with Blood. Armed with his shiny new spells, he thinks he's got a chance. Spoiler, he doesn't. Blood wipes the floor with him and then drops some truth bombs. Turns out the trio weren't just undead misfits, they were big deals in their past lives. A war ogre, a wandering sage, and the daughter of Matar. Gus, of course, can't resist running his spectral mouth, and Blood makes him apologize before they wander off for more cryptic grown-up talk. Blood promises to spill the family secrets when the kid's older. Life goes on, but curiosity kills the metaphorical cat when our boy breaks the #1 house rule. Don't bother Mary when she's praying in the temple. He sneaks in and sees Mary on fire literally, like she's auditioning to be the next Olympic torch. Panicked and thinking he's about to lose his undead mom, he tries to put the flames out, which ends with him in bed, arms burned and scarred despite some top-tier healing magic. Cue Gus dropping some heavy lore. Mary's bread, the same bread that's kept him going, comes from her prayers to Mater. Here's the kicker. Mary was a priestess of Mater who made a pact with Stagnate, Mater's nemesis, to become undead. Every time she prays, the flames are the price she pays for that divine bread. And while the flames are agony, Mary never stops. Her faith in Mater hasn't wavered, even though she's undead. Our protagonist, now humbled and inspired, asks if he can join her in prayer, wanting to understand the faith that keeps her going. Gus and Will sit down to chat about the 6 main gods that basically rule the temple they call home. Gus, being the philosophical ghost that he is, explains that humans are just way too small-brained to really understand the divine. Apparently, calling gods good or evil is pretty arbitrary. Who knew? Will thinks Gus is kind of punk rock for not sticking to the typical heavenly being narrative, but Gus is all chill about it. Like, yeah, I know, I'm awesome. Fast forward 5 years, and Will's training has gone from kinda tough to are you kidding me? Mary has him meditating for days on end. Gus is cramming his brain with magic lessons. And Blood skips the kitty gloves entirely and dumps him into an abandoned ruin full of undead. Have fun, kid, he says, handing Will a shield and some basic supplies. It's a dungeon crawl now, and Will has to fight his way through while dodging things that want to eat his face. Eventually, he stumbles across the mini-boss from hell, a skeletal demon called Avraskus. Things get dicey when Will loses his sword mid-fight, but lucky for him, he pocketed a magic weapon earlier because of course he did. While fending off the demon, he starts thinking about how long Blood, Mary, and Gus have been, well, dead, and maybe even his real parents. But before he can dive too deep into the existential feels, Gus pops up, and he is not there to chat. Nope, Gus immediately summons a freaking golem and starts a fight. Will takes the golem down with a well-aimed attack, only for Gus to follow up with every spell in his arsenal, from Stone Blast to the magical equivalent of NOP. Will starts to think Gus might actually want him dead. At one point, he considers using his shiny new magic spear to take Gus out. But he just can't do it. Instead, he goes full melodrama and offers his life. Gus, clearly lying, claims it was all just a test. Will knows that's a load of ghostly BS, but he doesn't push it, and they both head back to Mary and Blood like nothing happened. Time passes, and Will starts running through the dungeon on repeat, treating it like he's stuck in a never-ending Dark Souls boss rush. Gus, meanwhile, decides it's time to teach him the fine art of gambling. You know, life skills. But then Gus gets serious, pulls Will aside to talk about his coming-of-age ritual, a big deal where Will has to battle Blood as part of dedicating himself to a god. And here's the kicker. Gus asks him to throw the match. Naturally, Will is confused, asking himself why would Gus even ask him that, but Gus refuses to explain. This really ticks Will off. For one, he knows Gus tried to kill him before. Yeah, that's still hanging over their weird undead family dynamic. And two, he doesn't like being left in the dark about something this important. But Gus keeps his mouth shut, and Will decides he's not about to throw the fight without a good reason. Mary and Blood then explain the ritual, how it's all about choosing a god and swearing an oath to them. Will starts thinking about which god he'll choose and what his oath will be. The next day, we can see Will doing pull-ups, trying to turn his noodle arms into something respectable. Blood, being the kind of mentor who thrives on chaos, strolls in and decides what this training session needs, and it's none other than a booze. One thing leads to another, and now Will and Blood, completely hammered, hatch the world's worst idea. Let's go peep on Mary. Spoiler alert, it goes exactly as badly as you'd expect. They both get slapped into next week, and Will ends up having a wet dream he's immediately mortified about. Blood promises to take that secret to the grave, again, since he's already dead. Fast forward to the duel. Mary, in full mom mode, helps Will suit up in his shiny plate armor, asking which god or goddess he plans to dedicate himself to. The duel itself is a whole thing. Will gives it his all, but Blood still hands him a solid L. But hey, losing with style counts for something. Blood is impressed enough to reward him with a demon sword called Overeater. This thing's OP. It can slice through even the echoes of gods and heal its user. But of course, there's a catch. Overusing it will stunt your growth and probably get you killed. Classic great power, great responsibility vibes. Now, for the juicy backstory. 2 centuries ago, a demon lord showed up and decided to ruin everyone's day. He had an army of demons, could create new ones from his own body parts, and was basically immune to magic. Oh, and to top it off, malicious gods like Stagnate joined the chaos for fun. Naturally, the virtuous gods sent in their A-team, Mary, Blood, and Gus. The plan: Gus nukes the demon army, Blood takes on the demon lord Mano, and Mary keeps everyone alive. The reality: the demon lord was one step ahead, and things went south fast. In the end, they couldn't kill him, so they sealed him away. Then, Stagnate offers them a deal. Become undead, guard the seal, and he'll take care of the demons. Not exactly a great offer, but better than total annihilation. Fast forward 200 years, and some demons try to break the seal using baby Will as a human sacrifice. Mary, Blood, and Gus show up, wreck the demons, and are left with a dilemma: what to do with this tiny, screaming human. Mary and Blood want to raise him, while Gus is quite hesitant to it. They eventually agree to co-parent him, undead style. Will, now knowing the whole story, feels super grateful and starts dreaming about bringing his future friends back to meet his weird but lovable undead family. But then things take a gut punch turn. Remember that deal with Stagnate? Yeah, turns out their attachment to Will broke their attachment to the seal. Now Stagnate is here to collect their souls. Gus steps up to the plate, ready to throw down with an actual god Echo. We can see Gus squaring up against Stagnate, the god of Undeath's Echo, basically his avatar, to protect Mary and Blood's souls. Gus is all confident and flair, and for a hot second, it looks like he's got this in the bag. He seemingly obliterates Stagnate in a blink, but hold your applause. Turns out Stagnate pulled something like splitting his Echo in 2 tricks and blindsides Gus like a pro villain, leaving him and the undead parents thoroughly wrecked. Then Stagnate, ever the smarmy antagonist, casually thanks Will for existing, since he's the reason Mary and Blood's connection to the Demon Lord's seal weakened. Will is understandably crushed, and Stagnate ups the ante by offering Will a chance to join the undead crew. But hey, he's not totally heartless. He gives the kid until sunset the next day to mull it over. Will hauls the others back and spends the night crying himself to sleep, full of self-loathing and regret about screwing up in 2 lifetimes now. Morning rolls around, and Mary and Blood try to act like they've totally got this and will take on Stagnate themselves. But Will's no fool. He can tell they're in no shape to fight. So he does 2 big things. First, he drops the reincarnation secret. Yep, Will admits that he has memories from a past life. He unloads about how useless he felt back then and how he couldn't even cry over his parents' deaths, given all the baggage he carried. Mary, being the MVP she is, slaps him back to his senses and tells him to stop wallowing and start standing tall. Second, he steps up to the plate. Will decides to take on Stagnate himself, praying praying to the virtuous gods for strength and marching out like a one-man army. He challenges Stagnate, who sees through the ploy but decides to humor him anyway. Stagnate even calls forth a freaking army of undead heroes, about 100 of them who once fought alongside Mary, Blood, and Gus to take down the Demon Lord. Will lasts a minute, which is like an eternity in anime time, before Stagnate offers him the undead immortality pitch. Again, the deal: eternal life, zero risk of death, and unlimited time with his loved ones. Sounds tempting, right? Will pretends to go along with it, but uses the opportunity to get close and try to shank Stagnate with Overeater. Unfortunately, Stagnate pulls a fast one, summons a venomous snake, and poisons Will into oblivion. Game over? Not quite. Will wakes up in a trippy starfield, face to face with Gracefield, who, surprise, surprise, is a goddess. Turns out, this is the soul transfer hub where people get reincarnated with their memories wiped. Gracefield asks Will why he refused Stagnate's offer, and his answer: living forever as an unchanging undead sound way too much like his stagnant first life. He wants to grow, live, and make progress. Inspired by his resolve, Will asks Gracefield to become his patron goddess, pledging to serve her as her hero. Back in the mortal world, Will wakes up, calls on Gracefield's blessing, and flexes his shiny new divine power. This puts him firmly out of Stagnate's reach, since Gracefield is all about guiding souls to the afterlife and giving death a purpose. Stagnate, being a sore loser, shifts gears and decides to target Mary and Blood's souls instead. Everything kicks off with a brutal reality check for Will. Gracefield gently points out that Stagnate has been running circles around him. The god of undeath wasn't after Will. His true goal was Mary and Blood all along. Will sprints back to the temple like a man on fire. When he gets there, things are looking bleak. Stagnate's got Gus strung up like a piñata, and Mary and Blood are this close to becoming his eternal prizes. Just when it seems game over, Mother Mater comes in, the goddess who blessed Mary back in the day. Turns out she never revoked her blessing and has been quietly rooting for her this whole time. She smacks Stagnate's metaphorical hand away, pulling a divine not today, evil, and gives Will the opening he desperately needs. Will, seizing the moment, summons his divine torch and sends it hurtling toward Mary and Blood. This move would have sent them straight into the cycle of rebirth. No questions asked. Stagnate, being the meddler he is, jumps in to take the hit. That's his mistake because now he's wide open for a tag team beatdown. Blood strikes first, followed by Will. Stagnate tries to retaliate with magic, but Gus, still hanging around, literally and figuratively throws a silent spell, cutting him off mid-cast. Will lands the final blow, and Stagnate's echo vanishes, swearing vengeance as he goes. Will, in full anime protagonist mode, vows to live and die in Gracefield's name. Victory secured, Will has a sobering moment of reflection. He knows it was a close call, divine intervention, teamwork, and a lot of luck were the only reasons he pulled it off. But before there's time to party, reality crashes in. Mary and Blood's time is up. Their undead status was tied to their deal with Stagnate, and now that it's broken, their borrowed time is officially over. Will, understandably, panics and tries to find a way to keep them around, but Mary and Blood, ever the wise parents, gently remind him that death is a natural part of life. They've had their 2-century detour. It's time for them to move on. Parents are supposed to go before their children, after all. In a tear-filled goodbye, Will sobs about all the things he wanted to do with them, but they hold firm. They share final words of wisdom, the kind of heartfelt advice that would make even the coldest heart crack. Then, in one last toast with dwarven firewater, Mary and Blood depart this world, guided by Gracefield herself. Will's cries echo as they fade into the cycle of rebirth. Will buries them, crafting graves to honor their memory, and vows to return one day. Gus floats over to lighten the mood with some snark and a ton of treasure to send Will off into the world. Oh, and by the way, Gus casually mentions he made a deal with Gracefield to stick around for another 10 years to guard the High King's seal. And as if Will didn't already have enough on his plate, he learns Gracefield is basically broke when it comes to divine power. Turns out, gods need followers to stay strong, and she's fresh out. So, he recruit Gracefield's fan club to his to-do list. Before Will leaves, Gus gives him a parting gift, a family name. Since Mary and Blood gave him his first name, Gus caps it off with Mary Blood to honor his parent. Will adds a G to his middle name for Gus, completing his full name, William G. Maryblood. With that, our boy sets out on his new journey. Flashback time. Mary and Blood, in the middle of their demon lord slaying days, are hanging out in a fortress they just reclaimed. They talk about their plans for the future, if they survive their next big fight. Blood doesn't want Mary to join the final assault because he's terrified of losing her. But Mary, ever the badass, basically says, if you think I'm staying behind, you've got another thing coming. They dream about what life could be like after the war. A quiet house, a vegetable garden, and maybe a kid. They even imagine names. If it's a boy, William, because he'd need the will to carry their legacy. We can see Will doing what he does best, demon slaying. He's out on the road, putting his blood-trained combat skills to good use, slicing and dicing demons that have the audacity to cross his path. But as badass as he is, nature has its own plans. Thanks to 200 years of erosion and neglect, his journey is cut short by a busted bridge and a massive river. Because, of course, the world's geography couldn't stay the same just for him. Enter fate, or more specifically, a wild boar. While Will's dealing with a surprise attack from Porkzilla, a hunter shows up, claiming the boar as his target. Things get a little tense because, hey, nobody likes sharing their bacon, but Will works his charm, and soon enough, they're splitting the boar's liver like old buddies. The hunter introduces himself as Meneldor Menel for short and gives Will directions before peacing out, saying they probably won't see each other again. Sure, Menel, whatever you say. That night, as Will's about to hit the hay, Gracefield pops in with a divine vision. Classic cryptic deity move. Will sees Menel about to meet a very pointy end, and since ignoring a goddess is generally a bad idea, he takes off to prevent the tragedy. But when he gets to the scene, plot twist, Menel isn't the one in danger. Nope, he's the one planning the attack. Our boar hunting buddy is now leading a raid on a small village. Awkward. Will's not about to let this slide, so he and Menel face off. But here's the thing. Menel might be good with a bow, but Will is ridiculously overpowered. The fight ends in about 2 moves, with Will subduing him and the rest of the raiding party like it's no big deal. The village elder steps in, understandably wanting to know why Menel and his crew were about to go full pillage mode. Turns out it's a tragic story. Demons attacked Menel's village, leaving half the people dead and the other half desperate. With no food and no way to fight off the demons, Menel thought raiding a nearby village was their only shot at survival. He even volunteers to die to save his people, which is noble, but doesn't exactly solve the we're all. Will then steps in to play negotiator. Using the gold Gus gave him, he pays for the survivors' freedom and Menel's assistance in securing the demon-infested village. His reasoning? He's got a personal grudge against demons, and helping people in the name of Gracefield feels like the right thing to do. Plus, it's hard to build a heroic legacy when you're just letting folks swing on the gallows. Menel, of course, has to question Will's endless well of mercy. You know this is gonna backfire one day, right? He asks, clearly not understanding how main character energy works. Will shrugs it off, saying he believes in giving people second chances. Menel, grumbling the whole way, agrees to join him. With the deal struck and the villagers safe for now, the duo sets off to save Menel's village and hopefully prevent any more corpses from turning into undead surprises. Menel and Will sets up camp for the night. Menel, being the ultimate outdoorsy ranger guy, whips up a magical safe zone for them to rest. Conversation is kept to a minimum, mostly because Menel straight up admits he is not great at person. He'll lead him to the village, but he told him to not expect playing Demon Slayer. The next day, they arrive at the village, and Menel sneaks around to scout the place. The demons are busy prepping for some creepy ritual, complete with 2 Vraskus, a bunch of soldiers, and, oh yeah, a freaking manticore. Will takes one look and is like, I got this. With his trusty invisibility spell, he sneaks in, binds the manticore, one-shots the Vraskus, and blows up the demon beast with an epic stab and devastation combo. Meanwhile, Menel picks off the rest of the soldiers, but the celebration is short-lived. As they search for survivors, Menel's worst fear comes true. Some villagers survive, but not exactly alive. Yep, they're undead now, including a charred child Menel knows. The kid, blissfully unaware of his undead status, tells Menel he did exactly what he was told. He hid and waited for help. Seeing the kid's faith and tragic state is too much for Menel, who pulls back in horror. Will, the guy raised by undead, he steps up, hugs the kid like it's no big deal, and gently apologizes on Menel's behalf, saying his buddy is just tired. Will then sends the child off to the afterlife peacefully, earning a heartfelt apology and even a rare smile from Menel. There's one last stop, a home on the outskirts where Marple, now a spirit, waits. Will prepares for a fight, but Marple assures him it's unnecessary. She still has her wits about her. Menel, however, gets called out. Marple sees through his tough exterior and confronts him about the pressure he's been under, like arranging that ill-fated raid. Menel finally snaps. He rants about how the gods never helped him, how he was forced to make impossible choices, and how his long life has only brought him misery. By the end, he's begging Marple to let him die with her. But Marple, wise and loving as ever, reminds him the gods haven't abandoned him. They sent Will to save him. She encourages Menel to live and fight for the future before peacefully passing on, leaving behind vital intel about the demon's attack. With the undead taken care of, Will and Menel gather the bodies for burial, preparing for the villagers' return. Supplies hidden away mean the village can eventually rebuild, but Menel's future is still up in the air. Later, guided by fairies, Will finds Menel for some heart-to-heart time. Menel opens up about his tragic backstory, his mom's brief curiosity about life outside the forest, her death after his birth, and the discrimination he faced for being a half-elf. Life outside the forest was even worse, with danger and betrayal at every turn. Eventually, he found peace with Marple and her people until the demons ruined everything, pushing him to the brink. But now, thanks to Will, Menel has hope again. He pledges himself to Gracefield as a disciple under Will, vowing to atone for his past and live facing forward. Just like that, Gracefield gains a new follower, and Will gains his first real friend. Some good old local chatter about restocking supplies. Their destination? White sales. Will's reaction is basically, what's a white sales? So Menel, Ever the helpful lore dump machine explains it all. 200 years ago, when demons took over the continent, humanity noped out of there and fled north across the sea, leaving heroes like Blood and company to hold the line. Now folks are slowly reclaiming lost lands, and White Sails is the bustling hub where adventurers, traders, and anyone with divine visions come together. Turns out Gracefield, Will's goddess, used to be a big deal. But when everything went sideways during the demon invasion, her followers scattered. Some managed to hang on in the northern grasslands, keeping her name alive. Will figures his divine to-do list probably includes putting her back on the map, spiritually speaking. But first, they need supplies for the village. No money? No problem. Will suggests a quick treasure hunt in some ruins, where they score enough loot to set off toward White Sails. Along the way, they stumble across two travelers getting absolutely wrecked by a giant ape. Will steps in, radiates big Paladin energy, and scares the beast off with a look. Enter the new party members. Robbing a good fellow, a halfling bard with mad musical skills, and Antonio, a savvy human merchant. Mental, ever practical, figures traveling with Will's walking monster repellent aura is a good deal, so the group teams up. The journey gets interesting when they stop at a village. Bee draws crowds with her music, while Tonio works his merchant magic. Will plays the wholesome Paladin card, healing the sick for free and boosting Gracefield's rep. That's the end of the recap. Let us know if you want part 2 by leaving a comment in the comment section down below. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel to avoid being virgin forever. See you guys in the next video.